Okay, let's.
All right. Good afternoon, and thank you for joining us today to learn about Pierce Transit's Bus System Recovery Plan. My name is Rachel Holzheiser, and I am a Community Development Administrator for Pierce Transit, and I want to welcome you all to this live virtual town hall. Pierce Transit began its Bus System Recovery Plan efforts in July. This included analyzing service data and surveying the public to figure out their transit needs and wants. Our goal is to strategically increase and allocate transit resources across Pierce Transit's service area, especially after the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic. During this town hall, transit planning professionals from Nelson Nygaard will discuss two possible scenarios for the future of Pierce Transit bus service, and Pierce Transit Principal Planner Darren Stavish is here as well to assist in answering any questions. A survey will be made available after the town hall, where we can gather which improvements have the highest and lowest support from the public. This feedback results from the August Design Your Transit System survey, ridership and demographic data, and Pierce Transit staffing levels will all inform a final draft for improvements to be presented to our Board of Commissioners on November 13th. During this event, everyone will be on mute except for our presenters. If you have questions, please use the Q&A function within Zoom. We will pause for questions and answer them as we transition between each topic, and there will be time at the end of the presentation for a general Q&A where we will circle back to see any missed questions. This presentation is being recorded and will be posted on our website along with a link to our survey that will be open through Friday, October 27th. Closed captioning is available throughout this presentation. Please click the corresponding button from your Zoom menu if you are interested. Interpretación está disponible en español. Por favor, presione el botón de Interpretation abajo para escuchar esta presentación en español. Prior to starting, we're going to throw a multiple choice poll up. If you could please take a moment to let us know how you heard about this virtual town hall, and then we'll get started. So if you could please answer there, and we'll wait a moment while those come in. All right, fabulous. Thank you all. And with that, I would like to hand it over to Thomas Whitman, Principal Planner with Nelson Nygaard.
Great, thank you so much. I want to start off by saying it's like, why are we here? And why are we doing a bus system recovery plan? And the first step is really, it's like, that, COVID-19 has certainly changed how we've traveled, through the area, when and where we go, to certain places, and recognize that even though the pandemic may seem in the background and that some of the pandemic related, mandates have been lifted, that Pierce Transit is still suffering from the after effects of that by not having sufficient bus drivers or maintenance staff, specifically mechanics, to help us fully operate the system as it operated before the pandemic. Right now, Pierce Transit is operating about 80% of its pre-pandemic service levels. And this plan, the Bus System Recovery Plan, is really about how do we provide a roadmap on how to rebuild the service? What should that look like? And as more bus drivers and more mechanics become available, what should be implemented first? And so this plan is, the goals of it are to seek to understand what are the impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic, capture feedback, and we've done this through a series of processes I'll talk about in a little bit later, to better understand what some of the transportation needs are of the community, and look at that and take that feedback and recommend a series of options that can help improve folks for mobility today as well as in the future, and do it in a way that recognizes that travel patterns have changed, densities have changed, where people live and work might have changed, that incorporates those different elements. So in order to begin doing that, we started to take a look at how does the existing system working. We looked at the ridership and the connections, the transfers that are made for every route, every 7 days a week, to understand where's ridership working well, where are people going to and from, and trying to understand how it all fits together. Then to look at beyond what existing riders are doing, we looked at where people are traveling to and from. We use cell phone data that allows us to understand where people are traveling to and from. Cell phones track where you go to and from, and you can look at that database of what those travel patterns might look like, so that we understand not just where transit users or Pierce Transit users are going, but where's the overall market going? Where are people traveling to and from? And to begin answering one of the key questions of, is Pierce Transit service designed in a way that allows for this travel, to facilitate this travel? We also looked at population employment data. Where are people living? Where are people working? And how has that changed? We looked at not just what it is today, but where are some of those new apartment buildings? Where's high density housing being built? Where's low income housing being built? To understand, are we placing services in the right place today? And are we looking forward into the future to try to understand where those future needs might be as well? We also use socioeconomic data to identify those areas that need service the most, the priority populations, to understand, are we putting service in the places that need the service the most? And are there, as we look at rebuilding the service and adding service back, how do we prioritize those areas that need service the most? And then lastly, look at the regional growth projections and plans to help us understand, again, not just how are things today, but how will they be in the future? We complemented this with an outreach process. We looked at, we had a public survey that was an online survey. Pierce Transit got over 750 responses from both riders and non-riders. This is one of the biggest responses that Pierce Transit has gotten in years, to help understand what should be prioritized in putting service back. One of the things that we heard was the later evening service, earlier morning service, and restoring Saturday service, and restoring some of the routes that were significantly reduced, or no longer run, or some of the priorities that folks had for us. Additional frequency was one of the other priorities as well. We also met with a series of stakeholders who told us about some of the same themes in terms of weekend service, later evening service, and we also talked with the bus operators about some of their challenges and what they would think as some of the priorities were for restoring service. This allowed us to get an understanding of what our existing customers and what our potential customers are saying in terms of where do they want Pierce Transit to invest as it recovers from the COVID-19 pandemic. So we use that feedback, the market analysis, where people are traveling to and from, what our potential customers and current customers are telling us, to develop two different scenarios that rebuild service to pre-pandemic service levels. And I want to be clear here, what you see on the maps and what you see on the charts that that we're about to show you is something that takes the full view. It means that we have sufficient bus drivers and maintenance staff available to help accommodate that. And we know that this is not something that's going to happen in 2024, or that it's going to be phased. Any implementation, any improvement that we do is going to be phased. Each one of the scenarios highlights a different way that we can mix and match how early and how late service operates, and what the frequency on some of those routes are. And I want to be clear too here, is that we're not looking at making major route changes as part of this. The primary effort of this is to look at matching the service levels, the frequencies, and what days a week service runs on, and how early and how late service runs to the existing route structure, rather than making wholesale changes to the route structure. Almost every route stayed the same. There's a couple of exceptions, and we want to highlight what those might be. And both scenarios included the new Pacific Avenue SR7 enhanced bus service. That is a limited stop service between downtown Tacoma and the Spanaway area. I want to talk about each one of these scenarios, separately. And again, if folks have questions, I see a couple of questions coming in the chat in the Q&A. We will answer those at the end of this. And but if you have any questions, please write them down, send them to us, in the chat in the Q&A or Q&A, and we will do our best to answer those as we get them after the formal presentation. The first scenario is focus on span of service scenario. And this is how early or how late service operates. And we have four different routes: routes 13, route 63, 409, and 425, which will change, travel patterns. With three of those, the route 13, 63, and the 425 will be replaced by runner services. And the eastern portion of Route 409 would be replaced by runner service as well. This scenario would also include four routes to operate every 15 minutes throughout the day. This includes routes 1, 2, 3, and 500. 500 was not a frequent service route prior to the pandemic, and we're especially as we look forward to link implementation to Federal Way, it's something that should be considered. We'd also be looking at restoring time transfers at Tacoma Mall when buses run less frequently. And what that means is that if a route comes every hour, to have the routes like they used to years ago when service isn't operating very frequently, having timed connections so that several bus routes come together and then they leave again, so that travel times when service is operating less frequently, we don't have 55 or 45-minute connections between buses, but we try to make the travel times, the connections, more effective than what they are right now. And we talked a little bit about runner services replacing routes 63, 13, and 425. But the other real highlight of this scenario is buses operate earlier and later, so that almost every route operates on weekdays between 6 a.m. and 10 p.m., which is later than most service operates right now. On Saturdays, operate from 7 a.m. to 10 p.m., which is earlier and later than many of those routes operate right now. And on Sundays, operate between 8 a.m. and 8 p.m., which is typically like 3 hours, almost 3 to 4 hours more service than most routes operate on Sunday. So this acknowledges one of the key comments that we heard through our public outreach process of how to make the service more usable and where we would look at re-implementing service. So this is a depiction of what those routes might look like. The blue lines represent the service that would come every 15 minutes. And the purple zones represent new runner zones. We'd also be looking at a Gig Harbor runner zone as well. These might be a little bit hard to read on your screen if you're listening in. There's a QR code that you can use your phone if you have that handy to lead you to a link that allows you to download the maps and the frequency and how late and how early service operates charts as well. But overall, the route structure that is shown here is almost identical to what's operated right now. We're not looking at changing routes, but instead we're looking at changing how frequent service operates. So, this is a depiction of what weekday frequencies might look like. And the green color indicates, service that operates every 15 minutes. And we'd have four different routes. Again, the 1, 2, 3, and the 500 would operate every 15 minutes throughout the day on weekdays. But I think the key other element of this scenario is that almost every route operates till 10 p.m. and in some cases a little bit later than 10 p.m. But this is a huge upgrade of service from where we are right now, and an increase in mobility associated with the entire region's service. So I want to also touch upon a different way of looking at this, which is the focus on weekday frequencies or headways scenario. In this, routes 409 and 425 would change travel patterns. The eastern, much like the previous scenario, the eastern portion of route 409 as well as route 425 would be replaced by a new a new runner service. We'd look at having 7 different frequent service routes on weekdays, so with service coming every 15 minutes, and this would be routes 1, 2, 3, 41, 48, 54, and Route 500. There's a map I'll show you on the next slide that will show where those might be, but some of these, some of these additional routes, routes 41, 48, and 54 serve some of the highest need neighborhoods in the PTB, in the Pierce Transit service area. Much like the other scenario, we'd be looking at restoring time transfers at the Tacoma Mall when buses run less frequently, and having a new runner zone in Puyallup that would replace routes 425 and portions of Route 409. More routes would operate every 30 minutes on weekdays. So a lot of the routes that are operating every 60 minutes today will be upgraded to 30-minute service throughout the day to provide better connectivity and better choices for riders. And the highest ridership routes would run later 7 days a week. So what might this look like? This is a visual depiction of the route structure that would, that shows where service in a darker blue line would operate every 15 minutes throughout the day on weekdays. And, again, almost all of the, routes are identical to what they are today. We're not looking at making significant changes other to the routes we've highlighted in the text. Route 409 and 425. Every other route would stay as is today. What does change here, and this is a depiction of the frequency and how late and how early service would operate. This is something that does change, where again, we have 7 different routes, the routes 1, 2, 3, 41, 48, 54, and Route 500 running more frequently every 15 minutes on weekdays. And then just have some routes and the highest ridership routes operate later into the evening. And what this means is that on weekdays, Saturdays, and Sundays, most routes would not operate as frequently as the first option, but they would operate as frequently and as late as what they're operating today. So those represent the 2 different scenarios and how to restore service. And what we want to hear from you is which one of those visions speaks to you the most? Are there elements of one in one and in the other that you really like? What's most important to you as we look at designing a preferred bus system recovery plan that will show and provide the roadmap for what service will look like and how service is restored? Is providing more frequent service and shortening corridors the way forward? Is extending the span of service, how late or how early service operates, is extending that higher priority? Or is it some combination? What we want to do is to hear from you in terms of what's most important so that we can make an informed decision on how to proceed and find the appropriate mix and balance of moving forward with that. We don't actually anticipate choosing one or the other, but based on what we've heard so far as a part of our first public meeting and some of the comments we've received back, we are likely to see it's not an either or, but what is the combination that we might be looking for? What speaks to you and what's most important to you? That's what we'd like to hear from you as we look at finalizing, getting feedback over the month of October about this process, and then ultimately designing and developing a preferred plan that will be delivered and presented to the board in November and finalized in December. So overall, we want to get your feedback. And we want to hear back from you. And there's a couple of different ways you can do this. First of all, I want to, from a timeline perspective, again, reiterate that the improvements to the enhanced bus service along Pacific Avenue and SR7 between Spanaway and downtown Tacoma, that will happen, is likely to happen in March 2024. But any other service additions are going to be based on the number of mechanics we have available and the number of bus drivers that we have available. And we want to use your feedback to, help prioritize what these improvements might look like. There's a couple different ways you can provide feedback. The first one is to look at the QR code to take the survey on the scenarios. There's a QR code up on screen right now. And it's, the link for it is also piercetransitsurvey.com. And, to help us, go to the survey. It's a new survey. You might have filled out one beforehand. This is a new survey that, addresses like which elements of the different scenarios appeal to you the most. You can also go to Pierce Transit's website, which is online, piercetransit.org, and get further information on this process, and also provide feedback through a link to the survey as well. And also there's a phone number here as well as an email for Darren Stavish, who's also on this call, on this webinar, that can provide feedback to you if you would like to provide feedback with a phone call. The last way to provide feedback is for questions and comments during this open house and virtual town hall. And so, I think the next step is to start taking some of the feedback and start looking at trying to answer some of the questions that you might have. I want to say thank you so much for listening for the past 15 minutes or so, or 20 minutes. We're here to listen. We're here to try to answer your questions now. And we'd like to hear what your thoughts are. So with that, let me turn it back over to Rachel.
Sounds good. Thank you, Thomas. And let's see, we've got a few questions. Thank you all for using that Q&A function. We appreciate that. It looks like for the question regarding Route 102, there was an answer typed in there. I can go ahead and read that out loud in case anyone missed that answer in the text format. So from Darren Stavish, our principal planner, unfortunately, that route was phased out in March of 2020 due to low productivity. It is instead served by Sound Transit's Express Route 595 from Gig Harbor, the Purdy Park and Ride, to Seattle. That SD Express route also does stop at Tacoma Community College Transit Center and Tacoma Dome Station before continuing through to Seattle. And largely, it looks like, Darren, you can jump in if not, but there were some COVID implications to that route as well. Currently, there are no plans to reinstate that route. But I hope that answers your question, at least provide some insight there. This I will go ahead and read out loud and then pass off to one of our fabulous planning folks. But service options and runner possibilities for Northeast Tacoma or Brown Points. The existing services drivers drive users to other methods due to lack of services. If one of y'all could speak to potential solutions.
One of the options, like, first of all, let me mention something about Route 102. This was, as a part of this process, we also looked at previous comments over the past 3 to 5 years, I think. And Route 102 was one of the comments that came up, fairly, it was, there were a series of comments about that. As a result, one of the things we looked at was like, what was it that 102 achieved, and what didn't it achieve? And we looked at the ridership for Route 100 as well to help understand what those patterns are. One of the recommendations in both scenarios here is to provide an earlier Route 100 trip from the peninsula to try to provide better connectivity. It's, I recognize it's not restoring Route 102, but it is looking at the highest ridership loads on Route 100 and providing earlier service to provide more options to get to downtown Tacoma and other destinations within Pierce Transit service area at an earlier hour. So that is an improvement that I want to specifically highlight for this. I'm going to transition to the second part, the question about the Northeast Tacoma. Route 63 currently provides service in that area. and it is, very, very limited. And so one of the options was to increase the size of the Tide Flats runner on demand, or it's the runner zone associated with that, to provide better connectivity to that area. The area is very difficult to serve with a 40-foot size, bus. The road network's not very robust, and the demand historically has never been very, very high. That being said, there is a demand for service in that area, and we were looking at options, either keeping the existing 63, which is one of the options in one scenario, or looking at expanding the runner services, which is an on-demand type vehicle, to provide access to those areas. So we did look at different options to serve that, recognizing that there is a need that may not be well served by the existing service. So this is your opportunity to say, does the expansion of that runner service, is that the appropriate, does that address some of the mobility challenges that you see based on your comment in Northeast Tacoma?
Thank you, Thomas. Darren, it looks like you would like to answer the question regarding, will the new light rail cover the stops to Tacoma General and fill in for the Route 102 old stops?
Yeah. As much as I can, I tried to post in the chat Sound Transit's link. We cannot speak for Sound Transit, but if you go to soundtransit.org, their opening page says hello, T-Line extension now open, and it shows a map of all of the stops. So hopefully that answers the question for this participant, but I don't know. We don't represent Sound Transit. They're just a partnering agency, so we can't speak for them or answer questions regarding their service. It's an interactive map that you can hover over. I'm looking at it now, and it shows all of the new stops, and you can click on each stop on the new T-Link extension for that information. So hopefully that answers the question. I tried to put that in the chat, and I couldn't.
No worries. Thank you, Darren. And then just to follow up back with perhaps that Northeast runner extension, looks like that person has responded. Thank you. That runner
Would
might
you,
be best.
yeah, show that map too that had the Tide Flats runner service being expanded. There was a map that had that on there. There it is. No, you just went right past it.
There it is.
Right there. Yeah.
It's in purple. There's it's called the Tide Flats expansion area, and this is, would operate and replace Route 63.
And we're looking at that now at Pierce Transit for possible implementation in 2024 as soon as possible. Our next runner zone that will be expanded is, or a brand new zone, is our Puyallup runner, which we're hoping to launch by the end of this year.
Perfect. Thank you. We had a question. Is the recovery process only for the routes that are currently in service? Are there plans regarding the lack of service in the more populated areas in the south half of the county?
Yes to the first question. The second question is, are they talking about expanding to areas that are not within our service area? We cannot do that. There's a very strict boundaries that were drawn in the summer of 2012. So I don't know if I'm answering this person's question. They posted it under the name Island View Ward. What I can say is that I would ask the person to sign up for information regarding our new Destination 2045 long-range plan that we will be launching at the beginning of the year. We do have a vision scenario for expansion that includes the entire county, plus the process if we were to ever expand beyond our current boundaries back to serve additional areas of the county, especially those with the highest growth or those that are interested in rejoining the Pierce Transit service area, but they would have to annex themselves back in through a vote, a referendum to pay the 0.6% sales tax. So it's a lengthy process. I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, thanks, Darren. And I think that ties in as well. We have Ashley from WashDOT who had a question. Was expanding the service area to pre-2012 boundaries explicitly considered?
No, we can't.
Mm-hmm.
Not at all.
Right.
It's required by the state legislature. It has to go to a vote of the people that a particular city, town, or municipality or section of like unincorporated Southeast and South Pierce County would want to annex themselves back into the service area.
Great.
We can't do that. Pierce
Right.
Transit cannot go in or out. We can't remove anybody nor add anybody. That was passed by the legislature, I believe, in I want to say maybe 2014. I could get her that information if he'd like, but we cannot do it.
Great, thank you. And then it looks like Christine was able to find information regarding the Teen Lake extension just open, and it will cover 102 Old Route. If there's any other
No,
questions?
she said, will it cover the old 102? I don't know. I'd have to look at the map. The 102 was an express service that is redundant with Sound Transit offering their own. Plus, I mentioned Kitsap Transit is looking for an additional express service from Bremerton to the Purdy Park and ride to Gig Harbor to Tacoma Dome Station that they're studying now for a possible implementation in 2024. But I don't believe it would go anywhere near the 102 where the 102 operated before. I can look at the map.
Good, and then just Island View Award, looks like representing communities in Franklin, Pierce, and Bethel school districts, and often the lack of public transit comes up, so thank you, and if it's a vote that's required, it's good info to have in terms of regaining service in that area or getting it. Perfect. I think that covers the questions we've received so far. Again, thank you all so much for listening in and participating on today's presentation. Your time is sincerely appreciated, and without your feedback and participation, we have no direction. So we're very grateful to receive it from you all, the folks that we serve, and want to provide this invaluable resource to. So once again, QR code to the survey at piercetransitsurvey.com will let us know your opinions on these scenarios and what improvements you would like to see and would best serve your communities. And you can find more information at piercetrans.org/service recovery plan. We will post these slides in PDF form later this afternoon to that webpage, and this recorded presentation will be available on our website early next week. And I just got another question, so I'm going to cover that quick. Is contacting Darren the best way to connect on Northeast Browns Point runner info?
Yes, I mean, you're more than happy to. My coworker's on another call that actually manages that project, Eric Shizuski, but we can certainly. And I mean, I don't know what to say as far as the fact that it's under consideration. Probably the best thing, and again, I'm more than happy to talk to anybody one-on-one at any time, but I would suggest going on our website and signing up for updates, because you can specify what service you're interested in or what area. And that's on our landing page at the bottom. Or if you can keep us live for a few minutes, Rachel, I can provide that information here. I'll do that right now. I can put this in the chat.
Yeah, we have piercetransit.org/stay connected as well, allows you to put in your contact information and your preferred method for us to contact you or get you information regarding updates on plans, projects, ideas as well. So I hope that helps too.
Can I put that in the chat for all of anybody that's on the call to see as well? I answered the person directly that just asked me.
The chat is only available to panelists and hosts, so not just attendees.
Oh, okay. Well, again, yes, to reiterate, if you go to piercetransit.org/stay connected /stay connected is all one word, STAYCONNECED. You can sign up for updates on anything specific to a route or future plans. And we would strongly encourage anybody that was kind enough to join this town hall to please sign up.
All right, well, with that, thank you again. I'll go ahead and end this. I hope everyone has a wonderful rest of their day, and we appreciate your time and hope to hear from you and your feedback soon.
Rachel, do you think we should stay live for a few more minutes just in case, or?
Mm.
Maybe just give it till 12:40. I hate for somebody to jump on and go, where are they? I missed it.
Sounds good. Well, if you are here, you're allowed to skedaddle and we'll just hang around and see if anyone else comes in.
Yeah, maybe if you wouldn't mind. And if we could leave this up too, this last slide, it would be great.